Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. My name is Jane and today I'm gonna tell you about some more misconceptions about Goths. So if you didn't see my previous video, which was misconceptions number 1, I talked about some things that people think about Goths that just aren't true. And I will do the same in this video and just explain why these misconceptions aren't true and why I think people have these misconceptions about Goths. So before I start this video, I just want to say that all these misconceptions that I'm talking about, if you're one of the people who believes in one of these misconceptions, I'm not making this video to judge you or to be hateful towards you or to call you dumb or stupid or whatever. I'm just making this video to inform people of what kind of misconceptions there are about gods and to explain why these are misconceptions. But yeah, this is more an informative video and not something to judge you for. So the first one is something that I also saw as a comment under my last video, which is that gods are witches or gods practice witchcraft. Now a lot of people think witchcraft and goth are kind of the same thing or are both part of the same subculture. However, not all goths are witches and most goths that I know aren't actually interested in witchcraft at all. I personally am kind of interested in it. I have a lot of books about it. I also practice sometimes, but it's kind of, for me, it's something completely different than being goth. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm goth that I like witchcraft. But yeah, it's still a common misconception that people think that witches and goths are the same thing or that all goths are also witches. Witchcraft is more about practicing magic. It's just a totally different belief than the goth subculture, which is more about freedom, self-expression, the gothic music of course, and gothic literature and architecture. Now I do understand the confusion because there's some things in the witchy aesthetic and the goth aesthetic that overlap, and a lot of goths also dress with witchy symbols like pentacles and just those witchy kind of sleeves. So I understand that a lot of people think it's kind of the same, and maybe in some ways it kind of is. Now I do not actually know if there's a certain witch aesthetic because I don't think it's really about the aesthetic but more about the witchcraft. But if you think about the typical witch stuff, like the witchy sleeves, the really big sleeves or really long dresses and kind of a dark aesthetic, which is usually the way people depict witches. I understand that a lot of people think about goths because of that, because yeah, in some ways it just kind of looks goth, but yeah, it just isn't the same thing. So this misconception is something I already talked about a little bit in my previous video, because I had a little section about the goth girlfriend in that video. Now I have a lot of more things to say about this, so I'm just gonna put it as another misconception in this video. And the misconception is that goths are all kinky or all into BDSM. It's a really common misconception, especially on the internet, with all the people who say they wish they had a goth girlfriend because they're probably kinky and they're probably into BDSM, and goth girls are kind of a dark fantasy for them, you know? Which I kind of understand, because firstly a lot of people talk about it that way, so it's kind of spread around as a really common misconception. But it's also because in the goth aesthetic there's a lot of kind of BDSM features. There's chains and chokers and that sort of stuff, and I understand that that makes a lot of people think of BDSM. However, I do have to say that BDSM is not a goth thing at all, and people should not assume that all goths are into BDSM or kink, especially if people dress in a way that is with chains and chokers. The fact that they look that way doesn't mean they're actually into that. It's just part of the aesthetic. Some people dress that way and they are into that, some people just aren't into that and just think it's pretty. But a lot of people think or say that they aren't participating in the objectification of goths, even though a lot of people are. And I just think some people are really unaware of what objectifying someone really means, because a lot of these people will say that they don't do that but still make comments that make me wonder, do you understand that you're part of the problem right now, you know? Because if you want a goth girlfriend for the reasons that they are probably into BDSM or they are probably into kink or they just look really hot, I think that's just objectifying someone, because you're seeing them as a way to your satisfaction. You see them as like just a fantasy or just an object so you can have what you want, you know? You don't see them as a person, you see them as something you can do stuff with in bed, you know? And I just think that's still objectifying someone. So saying you want a goth girlfriend for those kind of reasons, I really think you are objectifying goth people. Now, if you are actually a person who is into goth people because you want them to be kinky or you want them to be into BDSM, I have a video for you that you can watch that can probably help you to find someone like that, and especially to approach someone like that without crossing anyone's boundaries and without being disrespectful. So you can just find someone who you're looking for without having to post everywhere on social media that you really want a goth girlfriend. And this person of Herbs and Altars explains that really well, and I think she can really help you find that person in a really good way. So I recommend watching it if you're one of those people who wants a goth girlfriend because of this reason that I'm talking about. Now, if you find someone who is goth or who isn't goth, who is in fact into kink and BDSM, you need to remember that they also have boundaries. Like, just like every other person, even if you're dressed kind of in a BDSM kind of way, you still have boundaries. So I don't think anyone would be interested in you if you would approach them and be like, hey baby girl, you look so hot, wanna go in bed with me and be tied up or whatever, you know? I don't think that's gonna work. So please remember that not every goth is into BDSM, and the people who are also have boundaries. Now, just as wearing crop tops and skirts is not an invitation for gross comments and flirting and that kind of stuff, wearing goth clothes is also not an invitation for that stuff. Now, as I mentioned in last video, because I know some people will still be offended because I'm saying this stuff, if you are into goth people because of like common interests, I think that's totally fine. I don't think that's objectifying someone because you're not thinking about their body or about hopping in bed with them. It's more about like, if you have the same kind of music taste, I understand why you would want a partner who is into the same stuff as you. That's kind of logical, and I think that is fine and a totally different thing than fetishizing and objectifying gothic girls. However, I do have to say that some people are like, I want a goth girlfriend because all goth girls are into dark stuff and are open-minded and are good at makeup. But yeah, you need to remember that if you say goth girls are your type because of something, maybe not every goth girl is that way. And there's also probably some people who are not goth who are into dark stuff and who are good at makeup and whatever you're looking for. So yeah, if you're looking for a partner, you don't always have to necessarily look for a goth person, because people who aren't goth are just as cool. But you know, whatever, it doesn't even matter. If you're not objectifying goths, I think it's fine if goths are your type. I mean, I understand, because goths are in fact pretty freaking cool. In addition to this, I want to talk about something that I saw after making my previous misconceptions video. Apparently there are people who think that it's a typical goth thing to have curvy bodies and big yiddies, if you understand what I mean. So there's actually people saying that goths typically have a hot body. And I'm sorry for saying this, but I just think it's kind of strange to say something like that, because how is a music-based subculture related to your body? Like, I just can't understand that. And maybe all goths that this person knows are just genetically blessed, but it's not a goth thing to have a certain body type. And I think this is just also objectifying and generalizing gothic girls to say that it's a typical goth thing to have a hot body or a curvy body. Like, this person probably meant it in a complimenting way or in like a nice way, you know, but it's not the way that we see it, because I just felt really uncomfortable reading that, because no, not all goths have the same body type, and it's not a goth thing to have a certain body type. I just kind of can't believe that I have to say this. It's not a thing that girls want to hear. It's not something that we want to hear as goths. Maybe some people are gonna say that I'm just too easily offended or grossed out, but I just think it just felt really wrong reading that sort of stuff, that people actually think that it's a typical thing for goth people to have the body type that they like. It's just, it's not true. Every goth is different. There's goths of all colors, of all body types, of all genders, and it's just not right to say such generalizing and objectifying things about people. So another misconception about Goths is that we worship Satan. This is actually something that I see a lot. Maybe it's more as jokes. There's also actually some people that are like kind of scared of Goths or avoid them because they think they are Satanists. But Satanism really hasn't got anything to do with Goth. In fact, Goth isn't even really based on religion. Especially not anymore. Now it's more about music. And of course there are some goths that are religious, but goths just don't really have to do much with religion, and especially not with Satanism. Goths often use satanic symbols and religious symbols in their aesthetic. For example, I'm wearing an upside down pentacle right now. I often wear crosses, I often wear upside down crosses. It's also just a thing you see a lot in the goth aesthetic. But it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with religion and with Satanism. And there's also just some goths that wear that kind of stuff more to look more shocking and look more different, or just because they think it's pretty like I do. But yeah, even though we wear those kind of symbols, some of us are actually religious, but mostly goths aren't, in my experience. Most goths are just not religious at all. And I have actually never met a goth who worships Satan. There's also something I saw as a comment under one of my videos that I thought was kind of funny, and it's the misconception that people think that goths are extinct or that goths don't exist anymore. And there's also some people who think that the only goths that exist are the ones who were goth like years back when goth really started to be a big thing, so that there aren't really any new goths anymore. This is all wrong though, because there are still a lot of goths. If you just look online, for example, goth is becoming more popular lately, especially because of like the TikToks that people make about being goth, and because the aesthetic is kind of starting to become more popular again. And there's also actually a lot of goths who are just new to the subculture. There's a lot of baby bats, as we call them, like people who are new to being goth. I personally don't really know any other goths around me, but I do know that there's a lot of goths in a lot of different countries. And there's goths from all ages, all genders, all origins. And we definitely aren't extinct. And there's also not a certain group of people that are goths. It's not just in one country, it's not just one gender, it's not only white people that are goth. Like, a lot of people are goth, and I think that's really awesome that goth is still a thing after all these years, that it's so strong that there's still people who want to become a goth. I just think it's really beautiful. And yeah, I do understand that a lot of people think that goths don't exist anymore, because like me, they probably don't see goths in real life. It's kind of hard to spot someone who is goth, because not all goths dress the way that I do and that the most popular goths do, you know. There's goths who dress colorful, there's goths who dress in a totally different way that doesn't look goth but is still kind of alternative. There's just all kinds of way that people dress as goths. So there's probably still some people around you that are goth, but who just don't show that they are goth. There's a lot of possibilities why you could think that goths don't exist anymore, but we do. And there's actually still a lot of like places for goths to go that are still really active, like for example, goth clubs, goth events, goth festivals, goth gatherings. There's just still a lot of places where goths meet up. So yeah, I just thought this was a really funny one to include, because well, obviously goths still exist because I'm sitting here. But yeah, I just want to mention that as one of the misconceptions that I've seen. So these were all the misconceptions that I could think of for now. I will make a new misconceptions video, so you can look forward to that. I don't know when I will upload it, but I'm definitely filming one after this one. So there will be a part 3. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing to my channel, leave a like and a comment on the video, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!